Do you know what I really love about Android? It's the fact that it gives you choice. Do you want a huge battery? There's an Android for that. Do you want a camera that can zoom in 100 times? There's an Android for that. And we're never far away from the launch of a new, experimental, exciting Android phone. So pretty much for this reason, this constant flurry of options, I've never been away from one for more than 2 weeks at a time. But over the last year, I would say something's changed for me. I've been seeing and using all of these ultra $1,400 flagship Android phones. And I'm starting to get this feeling that no matter how crazy the specs of Android phones get, there are certain things that just don't seem to get better. So, this is the story of why I've decided to jump ship to iOS, for now, and the brutally honest truth about what I found out by doing so. Also, massive thanks to Surfshark VPN for making this video possible. It all started in April 2019. I was in Barcelona with Nokia. They were launching a new phone. I was doing a few sponsored Instagram stories to show people the event, and understandably, they wanted those Instagram stories to be taken on a Nokia phone. It's fair enough, it's a cool idea. None of them could do it. It was like 4 PM at the time, so, starting to get a little bit darker, but still, we tried phone after phone after phone. We went through 5 different Nokias. I tried the Huawei I was using at the time. I even tried to borrow someone else's Samsung, and not a single one could take a decent quality Instagram story. And I remember just being puzzled. As a last resort, I also tried the iPhone XS I had with me. I'd actually only brought it as a backup in case my Huawei's battery died, but immediately, it was crystal clear. The footage turned out exactly how I thought it should have on the other phones. So when I got back after this event, I started researching. I was trying to understand why the iPhone did such a better job, even though its cameras weren't necessarily better. And it boils down to the fact that Apple makes less phones. In the whole of the last year, they released 3 models. So obviously, it's not a huge ask for Instagram to make an app that runs brilliantly on those 3 phones. How many Androids do you think came out last year? 50? 100? No, more like 1,000 phones. So when building the app for Android, Instagram can't possibly account for all of them, and their different screen sizes, and their different chipsets, and their different software skins. So instead of making a high quality tailored experience, they have to make a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's just not as good. Anyways, from that moment onwards, pretty much every time I went to a tech event, I'd have my main Android phone and then an iPhone in case I wanted to take a story. It's not ideal, but I made it work. Until I noticed something else. Okay, here's something about me. I'm someone who puts a lot of emphasis on time. I feel like time is the most important asset we have. It's got really deep. The point I'm trying to make is that I try to be as efficient as possible with my time. So for probably the last 9 months, when I've been talking to people on WhatsApp or Facebook, more often than not, I've moved to using voice notes instead of typing. And since making this transition, I quickly noticed that the voice notes I was getting back from people would vary wildly in quality. Some were crystal clear, and for others, they might as well have just typed the message in native Chinese and I'd have understood it better. Why is there such a disparity? It turns out this would be one of the shortest investigations I've ever done. Almost all the phones that sounded clear were iPhones. And at this point, I felt a little hard done by. I was using a Galaxy S10 5G at the time, a proper $1,200 enthusiast phone. And yet, I had friends who'd put zero thought into their phone of choice. They just walked into a T-Mobile store, picked up the cheapest iPhone they could buy, and their voice note sounded better. It's kind of annoying. So it was getting to the stage where I was looking at the iPhone and I was thinking, this could actually make my life easier. But it wasn't actually till last month that I finally made the switch. I love Android, but there are a few things about the way that my S20 Ultra did Android that I was starting to find a bit annoying. Like how they give people in some regions an inferior chip, or how they installed their own version of basically every app Google already makes. As someone who uses only the Google versions, it's kind of annoying that I have to have 2 different stores, 2 different calendars, and something that's caused me a bit of a problem, 2 different galleries. All I want is to be able to take a photo and for that photo to appear in Google Photos only, alongside every other photo I've taken on every other Android phone I've had. And Google Photos has got a brilliant backup system that automatically sends your photos to the cloud so as not to take up your storage. But every time I take a photo on a Samsung phone, whether I like it or not, it's going to get stored in Samsung's gallery as well, which is just going to fill up space on the phone. And then, if I want to back up my Samsung gallery photos, guess what? They don't get backed up to a Google account or even a Samsung account, but in fact, a Microsoft account, because Microsoft handles Samsung's cloud now. I don't want to blow this out of proportion, but it does lack cohesion. So I thought, this is as good a time as any to just sink some time into being an iPhone user. I was nervous. I mean, I'm a massive tinkerer. I love fiddling with launchers, home screens, icon packs, and I knew that if I switched, pretty much the best I could do in terms of customization is change a wallpaper. And probably my most surprising observation was that after a month in the iOS ecosystem, I forgot. You know, when you look online at the Apple fanboys and the Android fanboys with their pitchforks out, kind of verbally abusing each other, honestly, they're both just smartphones. Yes, they're built on a completely different software core, but 95% of the time, all a smartphone is just a portal to your applications. After a month of using this, most of the time, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm on an iPhone. I'm thinking, oh, I'm on Instagram or I'm on Twitter, the same way I did when I was using a Samsung phone. That said, there are some adjustments I've had to make, and there are some things here that I've got to hand to them. This phone does amazingly. And if you're enjoying the video, by the way, a sub to the channel would be brilliant. So, what don't I like? Well, for starters, the switching itself. Moving to an iPhone from an Android phone is not what I'd call a fun evening, and my WhatsApp messages are still somewhere in limbo. You pretty much can't transfer those. Lightning. The fact that Apple phones still use a Lightning port, I think is baffling. So the room I sleep in, it has one plug socket. And it's never been a problem, because my USB-C MacBook charger could charge every one of my gadgets. But ironically, now that I've switched to Apple's own iPhone, it can't. Notifications. iOS notifications have improved a lot from where they were, but using this still makes me appreciate how well Android handles them. I love being able to see which apps I've got notifications from just by glancing at the status bar. And even when you pull it down, I would say Android groups the notifications into neater packages. But all these things, they're pretty minor. I'd say the central thing that I'm missing while using an iPhone, the thing which I would go as far as to say is actually the biggest difference between using an iPhone and using an Android, is that Android allows you to make your own decisions. You can pick which device you want and what you want to do with it. The way I think of it is, it's fun to be able to express yourself. It's fun to be able to pick the clothes you wear. It's fun to be able to pick your hairstyle. And in the exact same way, I think it's fun to be able to pick your tech. I feel like when I was using an Android, I could pick a phone that was an expression of myself, that had the features that I thought were important. And because I was the one choosing my phone, I felt like every time I took a brilliant photo with my Samsung phone, that felt like a real consequence of my actions. I picked a phone that could take a photo like that. I always felt proud of it. But with iOS, once you've decided what your budget is, you have one, maybe two options. Those decisions that I would say are fun to make are made for you. And that also applies to what you can do with the phones. For example, I loved customizing my Android, but there's very little to do here. I loved the quirky, experimental camera features you tended to get there. Are they all polished and consistently great? No. Are they fun? Yes. Apple is different. In order to create this ultra-refined, polished experience, they stay well away from new experimental features. And I completely get it, it makes total sense. But for me, it means that the experience can feel a little clinical, a little sterile in comparison. But there is an upside to this. This lack of choice, this way that Apple controls the whole end-to-end experience, it has a few perks that I'm really starting to appreciate. Okay, for example, I wasn't a huge fan of the default cases I started with, but it became very clear to me when I was searching for a new one that I had about 10 times the choice than I previously had on my Samsung. Because Apple makes a small number of models, it makes far more sense for a case maker to put effort into designing something for those models than if they were to make a separate version for each of the 50 phones Samsung releases in a year. Social media apps. It turns out it's not just WhatsApp voice notes and Instagram stories that are really good on an iPhone. It feels like the whole experience of using social apps has been given a lot of love here. The subtle vibration when you like a photo on Instagram. The haptic feedback when refreshing the Twitter feed. It's noticeable. Okay, Face ID is brilliant. And the fact that Apple controls the hardware and the software means they've managed to weave it into everything. And I would say it fixes a problem that I didn't realize I had on Android. Logging into things. Sometimes I'd be using a PIN, sometimes I'd be using a password, sometimes a fingerprint. But here, you can pretty much use Face ID for everything. It works when my phone is tilted sideways, it works in pitch black, it works so quietly and effortlessly that I haven't actually thought about the process of unlocking my phone in like 2 weeks. You only remember the tech is there when someone else tries to pick your phone up, and then it's like... And this idea also follows through to iMessage. Because Apple builds the software for its own hardware, it can do stuff that WhatsApp can't. You can send money directly to someone seamlessly because iMessage will be automatically linked to their Apple account. You can send animojis, which take advantage of Apple's face scanning technology. Okay, Bloatware. Based on my past experiences, I was kind of on the lookout for bloatware, and there is some. Podcasts, Apple TV, and Apple News, but I was kind of surprised to see that I can just get rid of it. I can get rid of the default calculator, I can get rid of FaceTime, I can even get rid of what you would think is a core app like the iTunes Store. So yes, like every phone, the iPhone does still funnel you towards using Apple's other services, but I like the fact that it doesn't feel like it's shoving it down your throat. And finally, AirPods. As well as switching phones, I also swapped my Galaxy Buds Plus to the AirPods Pro, and I would go as far as to say that I think they're better. You unbox them, you open the case, and that is it. Connected. You don't need an app, you don't need to hold down a pairing button, you don't need to think about it. And there's so many subtle touches, like for example active noise cancellation, and when you put the earbuds in, that cancellation slowly fades in. You take one out and whatever's playing will get gently quieter before it pauses itself. We're talking about earphones that have an air vent on the top just to equalize pressure between the inside and outside of your ear, so that when you talk to people while you have them in, you don't get that boomy sound you normally do with silicone tips. The sound quality itself is okay, but the experience of using these is phenomenal. So that's where I'm at right now. I do feel like I'm somewhat compromising on the screen quality. I don't think there's a phone out there with a better screen than this Samsung had. And I also like the idea that this has so many cool things you can do with it. It's a bit of a toy, but for the job I need to get done, I feel like for now, the iPhone is actually doing it a little better. So I'll stick with it. I'll still make videos on Android apps and all the latest phones, but let's just see what happens. Okay, so about a year ago, I was contacted by Surfshark VPN, and they asked if I wanted to partner up with them. And I remember thinking, I haven't heard of Surfshark, but sure, let me give it a test and see if I like it. And I did. It does everything you need a VPN to do, like give you that peace of mind that your browsing is secure and anonymous. Also, I'd be traveling all around the world for launch events, and I'd be using it to access UK Netflix while I was sitting in China, for example. So that's fine, but now I've used it for a full year, it's becoming pretty clear to me that a lot, not all, but a lot of VPNs out there are borderline daylight robbery. They'll charge like $20, $30 a person a month for VPN access. Surfshark costs $1.99 per month for an unlimited amount of simultaneous connections. And there are some unique features too. You've got HackLock, which is designed to give you alerts should your email or password be compromised, ensuring that the first person to take action is you. And I like that using the Surfshark app on my MacBook, I can tap once in the bar at the top and quick connect to the last server I was connected to. So check the link in the description and use code BOSS. There's now a bigger discount than ever. It's 85% off and an extra 3 months for free. Thanks a lot for watching, and catch you in the next one.